On the line to discuss Australia's population growth sustainability further now is the Chief Economist and co-founder of Macro Business, Leith Van Onselen. He's also going to be addressing a public meeting in Adelaide this Saturday, which will address this topic, and I'm sure plenty of others. And it's great to have Leith on the line now. Leith, great to have you with us. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to be with you. Now, in the year ending 30 September 2023, we saw a population growth of just under 700,000 people, and that's a growth rate of 2.5%. We're looking at a lot of people coming into this country over the next few years, and for many cities in particular, and many regions for that matter, it looks as though it's going to be a fairly sort of topsy-turvy time. So why don't we just start with some background? Why is it unsustainable to see this level of population growth in Australia?
Yeah, look, it's unsustainable really because the rate of population growth is growing a lot faster than the nation's ability to provide housing, to provide infrastructure and also business investment and also obviously water supplies and things like that. So what it basically means is that, we've had massive population growth so far this century. So Australia's population's grown by 8.2 million people this century, which is a growth rate of about 44%. Absolutely huge numbers. And anybody who lives in a major city would know that housing hasn't kept pace with that population growth. And it's one of the reasons why, obviously house prices have gone up so much. It's also why rents have become so expensive. And it's also basically changed the Australian dream. So the Australian dream used to be you buy a house, it's got a backyard, etc. Now it's really morphing into having to live in a high-rise apartment and more likely renting than not. And it's really, it's just unsustainable in that situation. And to put some numbers around it, in the 60 years post the Second World War, Australia had net overseas migration averaging 90,000 per year. And from 2005 up to the pandemic, net overseas migration jumped from 90,000 per year on average over the 60 years to 220,000 over the following 15 years lead up to the pandemic. And last year, obviously, we had a bit of a dip during the pandemic, but last year, net overseas migration rocketed to 549,000. So it's really been just going up and up this century. And according to the actual official population projections, Australia's population is supposed to hit 40.5 million people by 2063, which is effectively an increase of about 13 million people on current levels in just 39 years from now. And that just and to put that number into perspective, that's the equivalent of adding Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, the current Sydney, a current Melbourne, a current Brisbane to Australia's population in just 39 years. And all that means is that our cities are going to become a lot larger, they're going to be way more congested, housing is going to become less affordable, and also we're going to struggle with things like water supply because we're going to have to supply water to those people, and water is going to become increasingly scarce because of climate change. We're going to have to find new water supplies, and those water supplies are going to be things like desalination, which are going to cost a lot of money. So my view is that the federal government needs to slow it down and needs to get back to those sort of historical average migration levels that we had in the 60 years post-World War II of about 90,000 per year, not these absurd numbers that we have currently and we've really run for nearly 20 years.
Leith Van Onselen talking all about how population growth in Australia is not sustainable, and he'll be in Adelaide this weekend talking more about it in front of a large audience. So, look, as far as the regions are concerned, there are a lot of parts of the outback in the country which are crying out for workers. I suppose that's sort of one of the pros of seeing a big increase in population. But again, I suppose you're about to tell me that there's going to be no way in which you can police where people move, right?
That's right. Unfortunately, I do get your point. Some areas, some regions obviously need more people. The problem with it is the overwhelming majority of migrants come to the major cities and principally Sydney and Melbourne. So they're not going to the regions and that there is the key problem. So based on the official projections, Melbourne's population by 2070 is supposed to be about 9.5 million people. Sydney's is going to be creeping up to about 9 million people. Those are huge numbers. They're going to turn into mega cities. And that's because effectively the migrants come to those two cities first and foremost and create a whole bunch of problems there. I do get the point that some of the regions need more people, but the problem with it is the migration system, the way it's set up, funnels them into the capital cities effectively because it's so reliant on international students who tend to study at universities in the cities. And that there is the real problem that we've got. And also, we don't bring in, in my view, I don't think we bring in the right types of migrants either. So we have far too many migrants coming through the international student route. They then become permanent residents later on. They very rarely work in trade. They don't work as builders. They don't work in sort of the areas where we've got the shortage. They instead, get these, do university degrees and end up being underemployed, not usually working in the jobs that they've got the degree for. And then that just creates a whole bunch of skill shortages in areas like trades and that sort of thing. So, I do get your point, but the problem with it is I live in Melbourne, so I'll just disclose that. And I've watched Melbourne's population swell by about 1.5 million people this century, and I've lived the consequences with worse traffic congestion and basically a lower quality of life.
Yeah, look, travelling in from Adelaide to Melbourne, the one thing I'm not envious of is getting around. Okay, so just looking at this issue and trying to find a way to sort of funnel more people into the regions, if it is going to be the case that we're going to see these major increases in our population, is there no way to sort of go around the tax offset sort of mechanism to see if we can get more people wanting to be farm managers and things like that, at least in the ag sector where we're crying out for more of a ballooning workforce? That won't work, I suppose, in your view?
Look, you can definitely do policies at the margin. I think the previous government tried to do a sort of migrants to the regions policy. The problem is what tends to happen is migrants go to the regions, and then once they've done their term, so they fulfil the requirements they have to go to that region, they tend to just come back to the cities anyway. And one of the problems is if you're coming from India or China or Nepal, which are three of our major source countries, you tend to gravitate to where your diaspora is, and they tend to be in the city. So they tend to want to be around their own countrymen, so they end up coming back to the cities anyway. So I think that's the problem. And in fact, most of the people actually moving to the countries are actually residents that move out of places like Sydney and Melbourne for a tree change because they just get sick of the congestion and they get sick of the expensive housing and stuff. So definitely, obviously Australia probably needs more farm managers, and we need more people to run farms because we've got, obviously, it's an aging cohort. A lot of them are baby boomers who are going to retire. We need someone to do those sorts of roles. We could definitely do small things. Like you might remember that the former government wanted to bring in some farmers from South Africa, and for some reason that created a political bombshell. We could definitely do things like that, but really those sorts of numbers are pretty small in the scheme of things. When we're talking of literally hundreds of thousands of people a year, the sorts of people you need in the bush are probably talking several thousand. So it's not really enough to hit the sides in a numbers sense. The bigger problem is in the capital cities where the numbers are just overwhelming, especially if you live in Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah, and you've got other issues, particularly in Adelaide at the moment, with train strikes going on. So you just wonder if that sort of continues long into the future. How on earth are things going to take care of themselves? So this is going to go on in Adelaide from 2 to 3:30 this Saturday at the Regent Room. That's at the Box Factory at 59 Regent Street Regent Street South, in Adelaide, hosted by the Sustainable Population Australia Group. Leith Van Onselen, thank you so much for your time, and I hope it all goes well in Adelaide this weekend.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks. I'm looking forward to going back to Adelaide. I've been there for quite a while.
It's a Country Viewpoint on Flow FM. Back